I've had that question asked so many times, and it's so hard to answer because, if you have good fortune enough to have been in some decent films along the road, then there are obviously things that stand out about all of them. I think what I remember most about films is the people that I've worked with rather than the film itself, if that makes any sense. And I don't think it'll ever get any better than it was on this film. It just was on all sides of the camera. It was, it was a labor of love for a lot of people. And I think in the end that we pulled it off with a piece of really good entertainment. And, as Brett said earlier, that's the world we live in. We're not curing anything, but hopefully some people's ills once in a while. Give them a chuckle, give them a laugh, and let them shed a tear maybe, and give them their money's worth. I'd say this is the one that was most enjoyable. I suppose that's why when I look back on my career, I don't think about the movies first. I think about the people. The people I worked with, the people who gave me a chance, and the people who taught me something along the way. Those are the things that stay with you. The pictures come and go. The years pass. But the people become part of your memory in a way that the work itself sometimes doesn't. And when I think about the people who shaped me before I ever had a career, I think about my dad. He worked for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and because of his work, I spent a lot of time outdoors with him and with the men he worked with. They were tough, hard-working men, but they were good men. They were outdoorsmen, and they had a work ethic that made an impression on me. I learned a lot about the kind of man I wanted to become just by being around them, and my father also had a very different idea about what my future should look like. I'd wanted to be an actor since I was a kid, but he wasn't convinced that acting was a realistic way for me to make a living. He was a practical man, and he came from a different time, and he wanted me to finish college and have something more secure. He once told me I had a snowball's chance in hell of having a career in Hollywood. When you're young, hearing something like that from your father isn't easy. You want your father to believe in you. You want him to look at the thing you're dreaming about and tell you that maybe you can make it work. But my dad was looking at the world from his own experience. He knew how difficult life could be, and he wasn't going to pretend otherwise. I kept going anyway. I went to college, left, went back, and eventually realized that acting was something I had to take seriously. I didn't know where it would lead. I just knew that if I wanted it, I was going to have to work for it. Then my father died. I was 18. He was 54, and he died of a heart attack in Portland. That's a strange age to lose your father. You're old enough to understand that he's gone, but you're still young enough to believe there will always be more time, more conversations, more chances to explain yourself, more chances to show him what you're going to do with your life. And suddenly, there aren't. My father never got to see the career I eventually built. He saw only a play or two of mine before he died. He never saw the films, the people I would work with, or the life that eventually came from the decision he had worried about. That's the part that stays with me. For a long time, I could remember his doubts about acting, but as I got older, I began to understand the man behind those doubts. He wasn't trying to hurt me. He was a realist. He was a hard worker. He had a work ethic that I eventually fashioned mine after, and that's something I've been grateful for throughout my life. So when I think about my father now, I don't think about him simply as the man who told me I probably wouldn't make it. I think about the man who taught me how to work. That's a different memory. And maybe that's what happens as you get older. You begin to see the people in your life differently. You stop holding on to one sentence they said and start remembering the whole person. My father gave me more than his doubts. He gave me an example. He showed me what hard work looked like. He showed me what responsibility looked like. And even though he never lived long enough to see where my own work would take me, his influence was already there. I wish he could have seen it. I wish I could have sat down with him years later and told him that I understood, that I knew he was trying to be realistic, that I knew he was trying to look after his son, and maybe I would have told him that he was right about one thing. It wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't, but I kept working, and I think that's where the story really begins, because after my father was gone, I had to decide what I was going to do with the life he had helped shape. I couldn't have another conversation with him. I couldn't change his mind. I couldn't give him the chance to see how it all turned out. All I could do was keep moving, and that's what I did. I went to Los Angeles, worked construction to support myself, studied acting, and slowly began trying to make a place for myself in a business where nobody was waiting for me. There were no guarantees. There were no promises. There was just the work. And maybe that's why his words stayed with me for so many years. Not because I wanted to spend my life proving him wrong, but because I wanted to know whether I could actually do what I decided to do. More than anything, I wanted him to be proud of me. That's the part I didn't understand when I was 18. I wasn't looking for an argument with my father. I was looking for his approval, and I never got the chance to hear it from him. That is something you can't fix with success. You can have a long career, you can make movies people remember, you can work with actors you've admired your whole life, you can have people tell you that you've done a good job, but none of that gives you back a conversation with someone who isn't there anymore. And that's where the memory changes. You stop asking whether they were right or wrong. You start asking what they left you. For me, my father left me a work ethic. He left me an appreciation for the outdoors. He left me memories of those men I grew up around, the kind of men who worked hard and expected something from themselves. And he left me with a lesson I didn't fully understand until much later. If you want something, you don't wait for somebody to hand it to you. You work for it. That's what I did. And every time I went to work, every time I took another role, every time I showed up and tried to do the best job I could, there was a little bit of that lesson with me. My father never got to see the finished story, but he was part of the beginning. And maybe that's enough. I still wish he could have seen it. I still wish I could have heard what he would have said, but I don't carry the loss the same way I did when I was 18. I carry the memory. I carry the lessons. And I carry the man he was. That's probably why when people ask me what I remember most about making movies, I don't necessarily think about the movies. I think about the people. And my father was one of the first people who taught me why. And I suppose that's what stays with you after all these years. And you lose someone, but you don't lose everything they gave you. You carry it forward without always realizing you're doing it. There were so many things my father never got to see. He never saw the long career, the friendships, the films that became important to people, or the life I eventually made for myself. But when I think about where I learned to keep going, I know where that came from. So I don't look back at his doubts with anger anymore. I look back with understanding. He was my father. He wanted me to be all right. He wanted me to have a future, even if he couldn't see the future I wanted for myself. And if I could have one more conversation with him, I don't think I'd try to prove anything. I'd just tell him, thank you. Thank you for the work ethic. Thank you for the example. And thank you for giving me something I could carry with me long after you were gone.